Welcome to the Odyssey of a Former Fat Kid. I am your host and former fat kid, Brian Grizz Butler. Today, I will be the guest. This also marks my 10th episode, which moves me into the 18th percentile of podcasts that have more than 10 episodes published. I'll tell you a bit about this kid, this guy's journey with mental, physical, and spiritual health, and dig into what led me to start this podcast and how it ties into broader goals I have for my health and yours. Given the name of the podcast, it will be understandable to think I was fat from my nugget-sized days, but I wasn't. I just hung out in the 90th percentile for weight and height for baby boys. I was big, but I was balanced. It wasn't until late elementary school and junior high that I began to really plump up and started getting really self-conscious about the way that I looked and the way that I functioned. One of the things that hit me hardest was my ability to perform in sports. I was in martial arts when I was younger and some other things as well that I'll get into in a little bit. I was fairly active for those years. Basketball in the backyard, martial arts class a few times a week, playing with friends during our parents' weekly choir rehearsals were all pretty normal. But I still gained weight. In junior high, I joined a basketball team through my youth pastor. Practice was tough. I was tall for my age. And so playing center for me when I was on the team made some sense. I remember playing one team where the other center was like 6'4" or 6'6" and had a mustache. And I was tall for my age, but not that tall and not that big. So it was a little rough. It was a tough game. At the end of the first season, I decided to play a 3-on-3 tournament with some other guys over a weekend. And that changed my life. I made it through the tournament, but hurt my foot in the process. That Sunday, I woke up without the ability to bear weight on it at all. I thought maybe I'd sprained it or broken something, wasn't sure. It turned out to be plantar fasciitis. And it was something that just stuck with me through all of my high school years. I mean, it was a chronic condition, and we sought medical help and different treatments, but nothing really worked. It was temporary relief, but I was still life was tough. And a really frustrating thing about this is that it made physical activity even more challenging. So like I could be on my feet for a few hours, and then because of the flare-up, I'd be on crutches for the next 2 to 3 days waiting for the inflammation to go down and the pain to subside enough for me to get back to some semblance of normal function. I emotionally ate at times. Clothes that I liked and felt good in were hard to come by. We didn't have the most money, and so sometimes when people would donate clothes, because of my height and my size, there usually wasn't something available for me, even though my siblings often got a lot of stuff. So it was just tough. And as a result, I gained more and more weight. I didn't like myself much. And by 17, I was 400 pounds. It sucked. My relationship with my body was strained. I didn't like how I looked. Couldn't move in the ways that I wanted to. And I felt like I was permanently in the friend zone and was going to be there for many, many, many years. Complicating matters is the fact that my understanding of healthy eating amounted to bland vegetables. Worst of all, my relationship with the Lord, with God, also felt distant, taxed by the struggles of life. That all began to change when a surgeon we were consulting with told me that losing weight could drastically improve the outcomes of the procedure we were considering to alleviate my foot pain. That moment was my call to action. I had a choice to make. And it started a winding journey to reclaim my mental, physical, and spiritual health. I made immediate changes to my eating habits, eating stuff like romaine lettuce and pineapple as a meal, which is nuts when I think back on it. But I did drop weight to around 360 pounds by the surgery time. And then over the next few years, I dropped more body fat down until I reached about 250 pounds. And I floated there for many years. I'm about 6'1", by the way. I used to be closer to 6'2", but, loss of hair and, life shrank a little bit. Um, a lot has happened since then, and I'll dig into those pieces in later convos. But the shift that pointed me in the direction I'm headed in now began during COVID, actually. Going through that changed me. In particular, I became much more aware of things like the significance of comorbidities and their contribution to increased risk of various illnesses or increasing the complications of various illnesses, and even COVID itself. I also realized that our growing mental, physical, and spiritual suffering that was becoming more apparent in the country, and COVID and isolation really amplified certain things, was due to, or at least in part, tied to fractured relationships with God, with each other, and with our bodies and food sources that God entrusted to us. So I felt I had to do something. I wasn't sure what it would be at that particular moment. Going back to school wasn't something that I was interested in at the time. I considered going for nutrition, but was and currently are still paying off my student loan debts, and I had no desire to take on additional debt. Plus, I work full time as a designer. Did back then, still do now. I freelance, and I'm married. And at the time, during COVID, my kids were very young. One had just been born. And so, after some additional prayer and thought and conversations with my wife and some other folks in business, I decided to invest in some additional business coaching and begin to pivot my freelance work towards serving health professionals primarily. And for clarity, when I say health, I'm speaking of our mental, physical, and spiritual health. And for additional nuance, I am a Christian and I view spiritual health through that lens, the nature and status of our relationship with God through Jesus Christ, and the nature and status of our relationships with other people. That's why I founded Brian Butler Studio. So I've taken my skills in designing visual identities and added brand development, which is business identity and reputation development and management, to build up and support those who counsel minds, fortify bodies, and disciple souls. Restoring the connection between our physical and non-physical health will also help us become better stewards of what we've been entrusted with. The Odyssey of a Former Fat Kid is an extension of this work, with the added layer of directly connecting everyday health-seeking people with experts through content and ways to work with them. So if the conversations that I've already created have been of help to you, please subscribe to my YouTube channel or wherever you like to watch or listen, and share it with others. Those small acts will allow me to continue the work. I greatly appreciate you and your time. The Odyssey continues.